Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Council of Elrond. In this short episode, I'm going to speak on the brief time Tolkien spent in Ireland, some of the inspirations he took from our home country and what he got up to whilst he visited. I'm Dave and with me is my co-host and fellow Irishman, Johnny.
For death and glory.
So the reasons for this episode is because recently our brother Paul was watching something on the telly and he kindly decided to record it for me on the old +1, you know yourself. And it was actually John Creedon, who's the Irish broadcaster, and he was looking at the history of place names in each county in Ireland. Now, this episode that he recorded was particularly interesting, not only because it features the counties Clare and Galway, where myself and Johnny hail, but also the affiliation Tolkien had with both these counties, which include very rural, secluded and beautiful landscapes such as Connemara and the Burn. These are really beautiful landscapes, but we'll get into that now in a few minutes. So first of all, Johnny, I just wanted to say to you, did you know that Tolkien not only visited Ireland, but he actually worked during some summers as an external examiner to the English department at UCG, which is the University College Galway.
Oh, wow.
Now known as NUIG. So he actually worked in NUIG and he set examinations in the late 1940s and early 1950s.
I didn't know anything about this, no. I have no idea of what Tolkien's relationship with Ireland was, or if he'd been here or anything. So that's class.
I had no idea before this show either. We just kind of got into it, and I heard Tolkien had something to do with some of these counties, and maybe he just liked them, and I don't know. He was friends with C.S. Lewis, who's Irish as well, or he's Northern Irish, so I assumed he might have visited here once or twice, but I didn't realise the extent of his love for Ireland, and I didn't realise he worked in...
Sure, who can blame him?
Yeah, who could blame him? I didn't realise he worked in the college that we've been to so many times, which is incredible.
Yeah, that's crazy.
One of his exams was titled Investigate, and this is pretty nerdy, Investigate the part played by environment in the development of character in the weaving of plot in the works of Emily Bronte, Jane Austen and Thomas Hardy. So it's pretty cool how he has that whole environmentalist perspective as well, and he's worked that into his exams just like he did in his later works.
All right, wow. I would definitely prefer to have gone to like NUIG College if Professor Tolkien was still teaching the curriculum there rather than some of the other professors that I had.
Yeah, it only went downhill from there. So his love for the west of Ireland is really what kept him coming back. So just to speak for a moment on one of Tolkien's lifelong friends, Diarmaid Murphy. Well, actually, Diarmaid Murphy's daughter, Rose McNamara. She remembered Tolkien visiting Ireland when she was just a teenager and the friendship Tolkien had with her family. Her mum and dad would drive Tolkien around the Burn, the Cliffs of Moher and Connemara. She described Tolkien as a laid-back man who would never allow her to pick a wildflower as, quote, it's just not done. She mentioned how one time they were walking and they turned around just to see Tolkien had completely nodded off in a rock. She said he was like completely at peace all the time, and that was Tolkien. He would just like fall asleep in random places, and
maybe he had. Did he ever get checked out for that disease where you just like fall asleep all the time? What's that disease?
Yeah,
called?
What is it?
Narcolepsy.
Narcolepsy, yeah.
Yeah, maybe he had that. Like whenever it was like it was brought on by wildflowers or something, or wild countryside, or whatever he sees, and he's just like, I feel a little nap coming on.
Yeah. It's the Irish sea air. It knocks you out, like, especially when you're down in the Burn.
Oh God, yeah. After a long day of cutting turf, you have to like just have a little nap here now.
Yeah. So that was the kind of guy he was. And she once said, quote, he was a very gentle man, tall with long grey hair, and often inclined to think out loud and say what was on his mind. Sometimes I did not know if he was addressing me or just thinking things out. So that's pretty cool. I can imagine Tolkien being like that kind of person, just randomly just saying something.
Sounds like Gandalf.
Yeah. It is like Gandalf, isn't it? And kind of like in that Tolkien movie that we talked about, his professor that Tolkien had was very similar to Gandalf as well.
My class is full, Mr. Tolkien, full, with students who can translate Old English at least as quickly and skillfully as you, and have already had 2 terms to establish themselves. Good afternoon.
So, before I get into it, for the listeners, would you let them know what the Burren is? This place I'm referring to, the Burren in the west of Ireland.
The Burren is a huge landmass in Ireland. It's a huge area in the west of Ireland in County Clare. I think it's just in County Clare. It's not in Galway either. No, it's just Clare. It's pretty famous for its very strange kind of characteristics. I don't know too much about it. I know that it's basically just mainly made out of limestone and just huge areas of like mountains and flatlands of just this like kind of hard limestone rock. But then also, for example, the Cliffs of Moher are a part of the Burren, which is the Cliffs of Moher are one of the most famous visual images of the country of Ireland. If you Google images of Ireland, one of the first images that you see will be the Cliffs of Moher. So these huge cliffs that are facing the Atlantic Ocean, which are really quite astounding to see. They're also a part of the Burren. So it's a huge area, but that's just one of the features in it. But it's also, I think it's famous because it's got loads of different types of like flowers and like fauna and flora and all that, which is very unusual for that part of the land. Or I don't know, I'm not really sure, but I stopped listening in geography class as a kid when they were talking about the Burren, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, flora and fauna. Well done. That's bringing back the geography there.
I don't know what the difference is. I don't know which is which.
I don't either. I looked up. I was like, is that just Irish words for flowers and beauty? But no.
No, I'm joking. But they always go together.
They always go together, yeah. And also when you mentioned the Cliffs of Moher there, if anyone doesn't know what the Cliffs of Moher are, but if you have seen A Princess Bride, they are the Cliffs of Insanity. Isn't that the name of them?
That's what they're called, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
See? The Cliffs of Insanity! Hurry up!
That's the claim to fame there. But yeah, you put it so eloquently, the Burren is just basically lots of limestone and beautiful scenery, and it's a place that loads of tourists would go to. And
Dave and I are from Galway, so Clare is the next county next door, so it takes us about, for example, to get from where our house is to the Cliffs of Moher is about an hour's drive or something like that. So it's right on our doorstep, so we are quite familiar with it.
We're very lucky to have it on our doorstep. And actually the word Burren comes from the Irish word Buireann, which just directly translates to rocky place. So there you go.
So if you want to pronounce something in Irish, just say the English word, but like fill your mouth with marshmallows. So it's like Burren.
Burren. Buireann.
Yeah, roll your R's as well. Very important for the pronunciation of Irish.
Yeah, especially if you're from up north. Buireann.
Yeah.
That kind of sounds Scottish.
Our hometown is Mary, but if you're from there, you pronounce it Mary with a little roll of the tongue.
In Oranmore.
In Oranmore, the county Galway, one pleasant evening in a month of May.
But interestingly, speaking about the Burren, beneath the Burren is one of the longest cave systems in all of Britain and Ireland, stretching over 16 kilometres. So actually, when it was discovered, it was the largest cave system in all of Ireland and the UK, but I think there's bigger ones now. But when Tolkien was visiting the Burren, this would have been one of the most popular things to do. So it was inevitable that he had visited it, and he probably went there quite regularly. But the interesting thing about this cave is the name of it. Now, as soon as I say the name, you're going to know what I'm going to talk about, because the name of the cave is Pull na Gollum, and that's Pollnagcolm, but the English variant would be Gollum, like Gollum, so spelled the exact same way as the creature Gollum. So this Pull na Gollum translates to home or hole of the pigeons, or in a fancier way, it's Cave of the Doves, which sounds much nicer. But yeah, it's widely believed that this was a huge influence for Tolkien when he wrote the character Gollum. Loads of people believe it. Any of the locals in this area.
Oh, I've never heard that before. That's cool. Wait, so what's the Irish word for pigeon? Is it Gullen?
Yeah, the Gollum, I'm guessing,
Gollum.
Golm, but it's also like pigeon, dove, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, pigeons and doves are basically the same thing.
Pigeons and doves, yeah. Apples and oranges.
Well, in Spanish, it's the same word. They just call them all the same thing.
Yeah, that was it. That's what I couldn't remember. Was it Irish or was it Spanish? But yeah, you told me that before, that pigeon and dove is basically the same, which is so dumb.
Yeah. Paloma means pigeon and it also means dove. So you're just kind of going... And it's also a girl's name as well. So I have a friend called...
It's also a shampoo?
Called Paloma. Is it?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, like, I'm thinking of dove.
Ah, okay. Right,
but Paloma Faith. It's also Paloma Faith. That's a girl's name.
Yeah, so so like, I mean, if it's a friend of yours, you could like, oh, her name means dove. But if it's like someone that you don't really like, you'd be like, oh, her name means pigeon. So
Look at that pigeon.
Yeah, but anyway, Gollum in Irish. It's interesting. I never knew the word for pigeon.
Yeah. Now it's Golm, but again, if you're at this cave, there will be signs that say Polna Gollum, spelled Gollum, and that's just because in Ireland we have lots of Irish names for, like, there's a place we go to called Enniscrone, but like the Irish would be Inishcrone. You know, it's all slightly changed.
Very similar, spelt with like the Irish alphabet, which is got fewer characters.
Yeah, but in this cave, the Polna Gollum cave, there's actually the native bird, which is obviously a pigeon or a dove. I don't know which one it is, but it actually makes a very guttural sound, very similar to like the throaty Smeagol. So there's so many little things. Well, I wonder, is it like that, or is it like...
Man, if I saw a pigeon, it was like... I'd be like, oh my God, get me away from this pigeon.
Yeah, well, anyways, that's what they say. I didn't get to see what this pigeon sounds like, but yeah, there seems to be loads of little things that could easily have inspired Tolkien to write about this creature Gollum from this cave. But in the show, they also mentioned that obviously Gollum was one of the characters in The Hobbit, and The Hobbit came out in 1937. Now, they claim that Tolkien didn't come to Ireland until the late 1940s, but as an environmentalist, Tolkien would have been very familiar with the book on caving by E.A. Baker, which very much references lots of Polna Gollum and was published in 1932, which is 5 years before The Hobbit. So it's not definite. It could be a massive coincidence, but at the same time, it's very possible that Tolkien read about this, was inspired by Polna Gollum, wrote about the character Gollum, and then came to visit Ireland, and that was one of the things he searched out to do.
I'm going to believe that that's the way it was, because that sounds cool, and I like that. And yeah, deadly.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to believe as well, because then it ties us to Tolkien, which is pretty cool. Dr. Liam Campbell, who's a Tolkien scholar, has sieved through the original manuscripts, talked about how the Burn and Connemara both heavily influenced some of his writing. He claims, and quote, "There are very clear passages where he has edited and changed in the 5 years between the first publication of the Fellowship of the Ring in 1954 and when he first visits Ireland in 1949, with endless drafts, chronological changes, adaptations, and late sections added, even coming down to changes in the colour of pen he used." There's a particular passage, however, from the Fellowship of the Ring that Campbell claims Tolkien would have added in 1951 after visiting Ireland 3 times. The passage speaks about an undulating ridge, hills rising to almost 1,000 feet, and how they fall and rise away, passages falling away to the east, standing stones and old ruins and green boglands. And basically, for the listeners, I've just described the Burn, which is pretty cool, because this all comes from the Fellowship of the Ring, and many scholars truly believe that this was Tolkien's inspiration for many places in the Fellowship of the Ring.
Wow. Yeah, and in the book of the Fellowship of the Ring, man, that guy knows how to go into detail when describing landscapes, and like he must have been like a serious topographer as well. I've been like, he's always talking about the gradient of the land in the opening chapters of the book. It's like when when the hobbits are like leaving the Shire, and the first like, I don't know, the first like 100 pages are just like, and then the hill started to rise again, and it creeped up to a little ledge, and then it slowly descended down. And, it's just, and you're like, oh my god, what's this? Is
And like
so much
sometimes
detail.
they're even in the same place, but he's describing it differently because of how the dew in the morning touches the grass, and how the sun rises this way, and a cold chill comes in from the east, and you're like, oh, get on with
Oh god, a place is not the same in the morning as it is in the early afternoon. It's totally different. And then at nighttime, oh my god.
And then they might be going in circles, and they revisit the place again.
Yeah.
We're going in circles.
Can you tell me again? So did Tolkien live in Ireland for a time when he taught in NUI, or did he come over? You said there as well that he had 3 different visits to Ireland. So did he come over for like short little stints, or did he actually come over at one period of time and spend a more permanent time in Ireland?
I think he didn't live here for like he came over for the summertime, and he would have actually lived in this house that's in it's, where is it? There is a house in the Burn, and it's actually been transformed into a hotel now, and it's quite cool. But he stayed with this family. Diarmid Murphy was his name, and they actually just became lifelong friends. And he used to come over for, I think it was 3 different summers that he had stints here. Maybe it was 3 or 4 where he was an external examiner, and he actually wrote some of the exams themselves. But in his downtime, he just used to go on trips out to the Burn. Apparently it was Galway, Clare and Cork were the 3 places that he was very fond of.
Very good.
But other than that, he actually had a bit of a weird relationship with Ireland. He seemed to like a lot of things, but he also kind of contradicted himself as well, where I think he once referenced Ireland as being quite an evil place. I can't remember what that was about.
That's the morning after a few pints of Guinness.
Yeah.
This evil place.
He did actually call it an evil place before, with only the religion of the people keeping that evil intact or something. It sounds very Lord of the Ringsy, but he had I think also there was a weird kind of relationship with Ireland due to the fact that when, in his time Ireland had gained independence, and that probably wasn't looked upon very well by British people.
Well, also maybe he wasn't treated with the most respect or something as like an Englishman coming over to visit Ireland in a time where Ireland was gaining independence, and after 800 years of struggle between Ireland and Britain, it was probably strange for an Englishman to come over and spend time in Ireland, and maybe he ran into some like animosity or something like that at certain points. So
perhaps, yeah. But I do think most of his time he was secluded out in the Burn, out in Connemara, in the cliffs, and he lived with this family who he seemed to love an awful lot.
Maybe he got shat on by a pigeon.
That's why you called him Gollum.
Yeah.
That's why. But I do have another fun fact which kind of ties into just what we were talking about here at the end. So in Ireland, we have a beautiful national language called Gaelic, but even though Tolkien was a master linguist and spent all his time in Ireland in the most Gaelic speaking parts, he didn't love the language and would not or could not learn it.
Well, he's like all children in Ireland who spent 13 years learning Irish, and we're like, we don't know how to speak it at all.
Yeah, but then we do kind of think that it's quite a beautiful language, but I don't know.
I like it. I like the Irish language.
like it.
I'd love to be able to speak it better.
Speak it more better.
It is a very tough language. It's a very strange language, and so I don't know. Maybe if I hear that Tolkien had difficulties learning it, again, maybe he just didn't want to learn it. But maybe if I believe he had difficulties, it's going to make me feel a bit better. Make me feel a bit better about my own personal I don't know, failings in that area of like trying to learn the language and doing it terribly. But
yeah, if I'd known this back in school, I would have been like, well, if the greatest linguist on the planet doesn't want to learn it, why should I? But one thing I thought was pretty cool about Tolkien is pretty much any time he referred to Ireland, he called it Éire, which is the Irish word for Ireland. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is kind of
cool. Fair play to him.
Fair play to him. Yeah, I like that. Very good.
I didn't know there was this much green in the whole galaxy.
There isn't that much information. Like, he just wasn't in Ireland that long, but I didn't know he was here at all, so that's why I thought.
No, me neither. This is all the first I've heard of any of this.
Yeah,
I didn't really know he had any connection with it. Like when people very often say like, "Oh, what do you think Tolkien's inspiration was for this or for that or very often people say, "What do you think his inspiration was for the Shire?" I always like to think, "Oh, maybe like the Shire was Ireland," but because it's like this little green pocket of the world where there's people over there that were not too serious. We're kind of a very silly people, and we're just messers, and we're not really, we're not a threat to anyone. We're just obsessed,
just like the Hobbits,
drinking and eating and poetry, and Ireland's famous for having some of the greatest poets of all time, and that's what I always like to think of it. Although at the back of my mind, I always thought, well, I never knew he'd any relationship with Ireland, so I always just thought it's probably just many of the beautiful areas of mainland England, where you've like in between Yorkshire or Lancashire or Shropshire or wherever. There's so many different places that have like really, really beautiful landscapes
that end in Shire.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go.
Coincidence?
That's probably more likely that where he got that. And yeah.
Coincidence? I think not!
Well, that concludes today's short episode of Tolkien's time that he spent in our beautiful country, which he often referred to in its Gaelic form as Éire. We hope you enjoyed it, and please let us know any cool Tolkien trivia that you know, and we may read it out in the show. If you'd like to help us out, please subscribe and rate the podcast, and consider checking out our Buy Me a Coffee account, buymeacoffee.com/the Mellon Heads, for one-time thank you donations or monthly subscriptions. And check us out on all our social media in the info section. We'll see you next week.